Welcome to Kudzu Sports. I'm your host, Rick Beach, along with Austin Island, doing a little Auburn talk, getting ready for the football season coming up. New coach, new expectations, I guess you could say. And I think for reality issues, new expectations, but they better be reasonable right off the bat. What are you looking for in Auburn this year, especially early on?
I just don't look like a complete mess, I guess. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously you want to see Bo Nix at least get something out of him. I mean, you don't know how much better he can get, but you want to at least see him play steady, right, to start off. Not a lot of turnovers and things like that.
Yeah, and I think for Bo, no matter what Joey Gatewood was in the past, having that TJ Finley is having a legit QB1 behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Could that push him a little more than we've seen? Because he's been, some could say complacent as far as knowing that was his job. And I think as the Auburn fans knew that was his job. There was nobody behind him that could take his job coming up.
Yeah.
So, having a TJ Finley, you look at, we know Bobo, the SEC's known Bobo for 20 years, being a coach at Georgia, calling plays at Georgia for, 10 years or so, and being out in Colorado State. But if I had to look at his time at Georgia, I look at 2014 for what he's going to do. And he had Hudson Mason at quarterback, but he had a horse back there with Todd Gurley. And then when Gurley got suspended, he had a stud and a workhorse in Nick Chubb. Could you see him using Tank Bisbee in that as far as using Bigsby to just run it 25, 30 carries a game?
Yeah, probably. It'll probably be a carry-on Johnson situation where the dude's just going to get every carry, because he might be the best player on the team. So.
And I think it's fair to say Tank is their absolute best player.
Yeah.
Having a Sean Shivers behind him at running back.
Yeah.
But your next two running backs from last year, one's at Florida State, one's at Central Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Most of your receivers are gone. Bringing in Demetrius Robertson is a big deal, I think, from Georgia. Not because it don't hurt a rival at all. I don't think it hurt Georgia one way or the other. But he is a good receiver. But he's going to go straight from being kind of overshadowed at Georgia to right in the catbird seat.
Mm-hmm.
And right out there, he's got to be your number one wide receiver.
Yeah.
When you look at, one of the leading receivers last year that is coming back is playing defensive line now.
Yeah.
So, Auburn really needs, personally, we hope Kobe Hudson is that guy just because of being a local guy.
Yeah.
We like to see him perform well. He's got size. Coach has been talking about him for, this year on his play. So we'd like to see Kobe Hudson. But I think D-Rob is going to be the key for if Bo Nix does do good, that means Demetrius Robertson's doing good.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think I think the real thing for Brian Harsin, I guess, is just showing some fight.
Right.
If you have not a great first year, but you hang in there, you got tough games, tough wins, tough losses, then that'll at least put you on the right track to building something from that point.
And it's something we've talked about before. Auburn has 4 non-conference games to start the season.
You don't want to come out losing to Georgia State.
That's the problem, because once you get them 4, you don't have a non-SEC game until the end. Normally there is a game, one of these between Alabama and Georgia in the past, that Auburn has been able to play a Alabama State or somebody like that. You don't have that this year. And when you look after Georgia State, you go LSU, Georgia, Arkansas, Ole Miss. That's
Brian Harsin's going to have to find a way to win one of those conference games.
Yeah, one of those
Arkansas
top.
or a Ole Miss or a.
Well, you even go to
Mississippi State. He's got to find something in one of those.
Your first 5 SEC games with LSU, Georgia, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got LSU, Arkansas, which we know Arkansas is going to be bitter about how that game ended last year. A&M,
Arkansas is not only going to be better; they're going to be a lot better.
Yeah, they're going to be a better team. Georgia, you know what you're getting in Georgia. LSU looks to be better than what Auburn saw last year.
I think everybody expects to bounce back.
Yeah, and they got Max Johnson, the quarterback. They got, when they came in there, and we just talked about TJ Finley coincidentally enough, but when he was on the LSU, they were down early in the year last year. They flipped a switch somewhere in that season and kind of become a different team in the second half of the season, and they're going to have revenge on their mind. Arkansas is going to have revenge on their mind.
Well, this might sound like coach speak, but it was that mentality of when addition by subtraction. Once you get rid of guys who don't want to be there, then you're left with all the guys who do want to be there.
Right.
It changes your mindset.
And the same, at Auburn with these guys that transferred out right after Gus.
Yeah.
So it's guys that are buying in. If they've bought into this and you buy in and lose to Akron, lose to Georgia State, all of a sudden some of that buying in, you're going to get hurt. You're going to have guys start seeing, well, maybe I fell for it. Maybe I fell for some fool's gold.
Yeah.
And, if you go 2-2 in those first 4 games, it's going to be a long season on the Plains. There's no way it's not.
Absolutely.
3-1 with the Penn State game in there.
Yeah.
You have to do that. I think I think Penn State needs to win win the Penn State game.
I think so.
And if they can get 4-0 coming out of that, then you just got to find 2 wins out of them 8 to go bowling. And with South Carolina and Mississippi State, you got to feel those are your shots right there.
Those are your shots, back to back.
He needs a signature win this year. It may be the Penn State game. I feel it's going to be Texas A&M or an Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is going to have a really good season, and I think Auburn can be sitting there, having a bye week coming into that with an opportunity to throw an upset out there because I just don't – LSU, they haven't won Baton Rouge since 1999. Mm-hmm. We don't know. Now, Penn State seems prime for the taking, but if Penn State drops week 1 to Wisconsin, all of a sudden that whole – that win don't mean as much. If they're 1-1, 0-2, that win don't mean anything.
Yeah, it's and I hope they slip up and beat somebody because college football's better when Auburn fans are like alive.
Yeah,
because I don't know where they've been. Like Auburn Twitter, like you get on there, it's like tumbleweeds rolling down your timeline. Like I think it's a lot funner, at least in this part of the country, Columbus, Georgia, 45 minutes away from Auburn, when Auburn fans are involved, but they're not involved right now. They don't really have high expectations.
And you look at the Iron Bowl.
Maybe there's like some kind of shell shock factor with the whole Gus Malzahn thing. I mean,
and for college football, when the Iron Bowl is big, but if you have 11-0 Alabama and then a 3-win Auburn team rolling in, that ain't what people want to see. I do think Auburn needs to have an upset thrown there, and I do think they will throw some upsets in there.
Yeah.
I could see Texas A&M losing. I could see Auburn beating Texas A&M. I can see them beat a lot of them teams outside of probably the big 3 that they've struggled with lately, being LSU. And I say struggle with LSU. Last year, wasn't a normal season, wasn't a normal LSU team with the depleted roster.
Go back 19, 18, 17.
Yeah, I mean it's
they can't win in Baton Rouge. Are they playing in Baton Rouge?
It's in Baton Rouge with a 20. It's been 20 years since Auburn's won there. So, if they could upset a Georgia in Jordan-Hare, which has happened, usually it's the other way around when it's a national, highly ranked Auburn team getting knocked off. But that's what he needs. That's what Brian Harrison needs to happen this year, because you can't go into this year go 3-9. And then say we're getting better because you just fired a coach for going 8-9 wins, and now you're down here doing this.
Because you're gonna have a hard time selling to recruits at this point. If you go 3-9, it's gonna be even harder because you can promise them playing time, but who wants to get early playing time just to get beat like a drum?
Right? Because Auburn, we're so close. Okay, Auburn and Atlanta, you're not competing with Florida State, Central Florida for recruits. You're competing against Georgia, Clemson, Alabama.
Yeah.
And that's a problem when you're going, if you only give, say 6-6, which I think would be a good season for Auburn this year, looking at their schedule.
Yeah.
And if you go 6-6, but Clemson, Georgia, Alabama are in the Final Four, or at least in the talks for the Final Four like they've been, and then what if Shane Beamer has a big year? Now South Carolina's creeping down into Atlanta to get some of this talent. What if A&M goes big this year? They could get that footprint a little bit bigger. And that's the problem for Auburn, is saying you're competing against the big dogs and you're not quite where you need to be. Even with the multi-million-dollar facility, which looks amazing and is super cool and it's going to help in recruitment, but at the end of the day, you got to win on the field. And you see that, from some of these teams that recruit well. Texas A&M's one of them in the past, and that's somebody that they better start winning and having that pay off. Georgia in the same boat, having these, you recruit well every year, and you just keep saying, well, we're building for next year. Well, you better hit. And Auburn's one of those teams that's just been getting passed by all these other schools. They haven't recruited like they should. It's not. How does Auburn not have wide receivers on this team? How do you not have offensive linemen? I know that's Gus Miles on Black, but that's Auburn's fault.
Yeah.
Gus is gone, so now Harrison he inherits this pile of crap, and now he's got to try to make something out of it. And like I said, having players buy in is all well and good if you're winning.
Yeah.
Because you know how 18-year-old kids are, 19-year-old, they buy into something, they can tell it's BS, they're done. And that's where I feel. What's your season projection for Auburn this season?
I'll go 5-7.
5-7,
Yeah.
And I'll say 7-5 with some upsets thrown in there. I think Akron will be a big win, night game, sold out Jordan-Hare.
Yeah.
I think Jordan-Hare is the best home field advantage in football because it's easy to say LSU, it's easy to say Alabama, but hell, they're always good.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn's not always the better team, but the fans put them over the top. I think the Akron game will have a huge, being the opening game in 2 years since they've had fans.
Yeah.
The excitement level with a new head coach, and I think that's going to go. Georgia State, I would say, pin that game. 4th game of the year, pin that game. Georgia State's beaten teams before.
We just seen it.
They've beaten Tennessee.
Yeah.
Sun Belt is not to be messed with.
Yeah.
You look at last year, Big 12 went 0-3 against the Big 12 opening season. Georgia State, Sun Belt Conference, that's going to be a dangerous game. You drop that game, you got 8 straight SEC after that. Your 5-7 might automatically be a 3-8, 3-9. I'm sorry. So I'm hoping Auburn has a big year. Football, like you said, is always better when Auburn does.
Yeah, and Auburn fans, you could beat Tennessee, so at least be happy that you're not dealing with that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the teams from the '90s that were dominant, and now look now, Nebraska and Tennessee. Neither one of them is nowhere near projecting up. I could see Auburn. Like I said, 7-5 would be good for Auburn. Build on that for next year, and your program's nowhere near the level of a dumpster fire.
Yeah, you're right there.
Tennessee.
I'm not saying you're right there to the top tier, but you're within a shooting distance of making a run every 1 to 2 years. Making a good conference championship run.
Yeah, and I think the location of Auburn, you're automatically a step up on Ole Miss.
Yeah.
You're a step up on Arkansas. You're a step up on some of these teams.
Yeah.
Because you are right there in Atlanta. Right, where Auburn is located, Atlanta's right up there. Florida's not far. You could pull kids into Auburn fairly easy compared to some of these other states. And being in the SEC West.
But you're going to have to do something interesting this year.
Right.
To create that buzz to even get in that conference.
How do Brian Harrison walk into a house after Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, and Kirby Smart say, we went 3-9, you mind helping us out? It don't work that easy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You got to bring something extra to the table for these kids.
I think 7-5 would be really good for Auburn with this schedule that they have.
Yeah.
I think 7-5. Is it great? No. But
that's
I think
a good start.
It gets you where you need to be.
Yeah.
Gus messed up by going to the national championship the first year. Unrealistic expectations the rest of his career. So you know what? A 7-5 would be pretty good because now your expectations aren't as high for every year.
Yeah.
So that's all the time we got. Austin, what'd you say? 5-7.
5-7.
I'm gonna roll with 7-5. And be sure to subscribe to Kudzu Sports and check us out next week.